Hello again, my fellow weary travelers. This is your Dark Nerd Rises, Andre Dion Moore. And tonight, just for a little brief intro, I'm making this little semi short here on something that I was wanting to discuss in a later video, a little bit more extended video on what role God plays in the state of comics. Now, in this one video right here, just a little small introduction, I'm going to talk about two of the most powerful beings that are in both Marvel and DC. And when I mean most powerful, the ones that are supposed to be depicting and representing the most high presence in the world, and that is God, Jehovah God. So if you look right behind me, this little elderly gentleman is known as the Presence. Now, the Presence was a character that was actually introduced way back in 1941, somewhere around in there. I have to look that up. But later on, he was utilized and realized that this was God coming in some sort of physical form. And he, right here, this shows that in the DC Comics pantheon, it shows that there is someone above all who created the universe and everything. Now we'll debate about the multiverse and so forth, but that's a you know, convoluted thing and everything. But as the presence, he has used many agents throughout the years, and one of his agents is someone who was a founding member of the JS, and that being was is known as the Spectre, who was bonded to a human host named Jim Corrigan, but the Spectre was originally an angel, a high-ranking angel who sided with Satan during the original rebellion in heaven. But he later repented, and God decided to use him, wiped his mind clean, started him over as a spirit of vengeance. And it was said that it was his voice that shattered the walls of Jericho. And he was used in many different vengeance campaigns throughout the years, but he had to be bonded to a human host to control his emotions, but he always, no matter what, answered to a higher power. So that kind of shows you basically, like, what the role God plays in the world of in the DC universe, especially in their universes where the Greek gods are pretty much dominant. So it's amazing to see how DC, the many of the writers, especially who may have come from strong religious backgrounds, will incorporate certain aspects of their beliefs in, but not to preach, but just to give you an example of what um, they try to put God in as a universe for, probably for them not to they not feel like they're going to be blasphemous, whenever they do a comic book. And it's the same thing with DC with Marvel Comics. And here, their version of God has a peculiar name. This is the one above all. And really, that kind of sets the tone of an explaining of who he is. He has been a large presence in the Marvel Comics universe for so years that even Thor references him as, even though he may be a god, there is one God that watches over us all. And that right there, again, it just explains that, there are different writers on both sides that, feel that they may not use God in a way as a superhero, but they could use him as a metaphor, but also to write stories where it could be encouraging to others. And that's something that really always struck me. And to me personally, to be honest with you, as a Jehovah's Witness growing up and reading comic books, my imagination ran wild to where, like, there were times I felt like I was being blasphemous by reading these characters, these books about gods and so forth, and yet God was never mentioned. But yet, as I read further, I loved it because I found out that these writers were not trying to preach, but what they were doing was expressing, maybe, without throughout any denomination, whoever you believe, whether it's the Heavenly Father, Jehovah, or Buddha, or anyone, whatever your personal beliefs are, you can read a comic book and you can see that being expressed through them. So that's something that was a big takeaway for me. And plus, too, how I used to, when I used to wish that Marvel would be the first superheroes to actually come in real life. Trust me, I had some ideas on how the gods such as Thor would manifest. And I'll explain in a different video, but trust me, it's very fun. But no, when you look at the role of God in both comic books, just think about that. Many of these writers come from deep religious faiths, and that what they believe in and what they do is not contradicting what they believe, especially with what they write, but they will try to find a way to make you realize that, despite what we feel, we know that there is someone higher above us. And whether they might be writers on books like Thor or Wonder Woman or Doctor Strange, no matter what they might feel or believe, and especially with Doctor Strange with supernatural occult, dealings, you're not espousing the occult. But the thing is that that can allow you and allow Doctor Strange to even sit there and say, hey, there's someone higher than this, so I cannot touch him. There's no way. So that kind of gives you, when they sit there and say that, they are acknowledging what they believe and how they feel. But I want to touch on this subject a little later. I want to make a little lengthier video on this, and describe in length, at least how each versions of God, play in play central roles in the Marvel and DC universe and so forth. So it's interesting when you look at that. If you a person who is faithful in whatever religion you believe, I'm faithful to me as a Christian and so forth. You know, I'm I'm humbled, but I'm also like I always breathe a sigh of relief whenever I read a story like this, and because to me, no matter what I believe in, I'm never going to write a story where it will be someone where no one will be excluded. So when you look at the stories and they touch on the issue of God and so forth, don't think they're trying to throw their religion on you. No, they're giving you a different point of view of how the writers see God, but also how superheroes can see God and what their personal faiths are. So Nightcrawler, for example, he believes in God and in higher power. So we should know that there are many characters that have deep religious faiths, and we know that now with both Marvel and DC, with DC's the presence and Marvel's the one above all. That just shows you that no matter what you believe in, no matter what, it basically is like your role and love for God and for Buddha or for anyone else will never swerve or never change. Just remember that comic books is still an escape. It's therapeutic, and it helps us realize what we, as people who are of a spiritually minded with spiritual souls, we can always connect to the genre, to comic books. So remember that. So, folks, thank you so very much, and thank you for the likes. And please comment. Feel free to. I need to hear some more comments. I need to hear feedback from you guys. So forth. I said I know I'm still trying to work my best to create get my content a little bit better and so forth. But please hit and like the subscribe buttons. And again, my channel is growing, and I want to thank you all for this. So please have a blessed day and a wonderful night. And as always, my fellow travelers, agape.